Blink-182, 9.
Was it that bad?
Well, it's the 9th full-length album. It's the second without Tom DeLonge, bringing in new vocalist Matt Skiba.
And this is the follow-up album from California, which wasn't received too well, so they really had to do something special with this one to keep fans interested. But did they actually meet that mark? Let's find out with the first track, The First Time. What did you think?
I thought that this was catchy, kind of good vibes. It very much reminded me of California straight off the bat. It's punky enough. It's just there. Do you know what I mean? I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it. And I feel like that's something I might say a few times throughout this video. But what did you think of The First Time?
It's not that bad as an opening track. I thought the intro felt very Blink coded. Blink have a certain style of song that they have for their intro tracks. Like you got Anthem Part 2 and songs like that. So this kind of met that mark, I felt. The whole track feels rather classic Blink compared to other tracks on this album. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, you know.
And then we move on to Happy Days. This is a strange song with a strange title. For some reason, this song reminds me of something. Imagine if you're a church mum and you want to be edgy. This is the song you'd put on.
Like edgy Christian rock type. Yeah. So for me, I thought this was another great track off the back of the first one. I didn't think either of these were really that bad. It was more serious and calm, but still fun. It still kept the energy going whilst having more of a serious vibe to it.
I don't dislike this song, but for me, I just think the entire premise being I want to have happy days, it's just a little bit too cringy happiness for me. I get that, and that's very much the vibe that Mark's gone with on a lot of recent projects, but it didn't really do it for me. This was the only song on the album where there was only vocals from Mark as well.
Yeah, which seems like a missed thing to do when you've got Matt Skiba, who is an incredible vocalist and an incredible lyricist, may I just add. And they've not really utilised him on this album much more than a couple of whoa-whoa-whoas. There's some good Matt Skiba bits, but moving off this, we go into Heaven.
I thought that this felt a little bit more poppy than the previous tracks, if that makes sense. I still liked it. It was still a decent track, but again, I feel like I'm going to say this so much. I think that the formula for this song in terms of calm, ooh, there's a heavy moment, back to calm, ooh, there's a heavy moment, back to calm, it just felt very repetitive and unimaginative.
This track would do really well if it had Tom's vocals on it instead of Mark's. I felt like the kind of style of this track felt more like something that Tom DeLonge would write over something that Mark could lend himself to. So when Skiba comes in, who I'd say vocals are closest to Tom out of all of them, it kind of worked much better, but Mark on this track just didn't hit right for me. And the chorus is lacking something, and the lyrics are particularly poor for Blink.
I didn't dislike it, but I just didn't quite vibe with it. I don't know what it was. It wasn't the worst song I've ever heard. I just couldn't get down how I wanted.
Angel wings at the bus stop, halos left on top of the bar. They're just words. They are just words that don't really mean much to me, and I don't think it's that good.
A similar vibe on the next song for me, which is Dark Side. That I quite enjoyed this when it first came out, but going back and re-listening to it, I thought the lyrical content again was really poor. Similar to Happy Days, but in a different kind of tone and manner. I'm going to the dark side with it. It's just, come on, it feels so basic.
I thought Matt's chorus was really good though. Like it sounded really good with the
Matt's vocals are really good throughout this album and California.
He's just a great vocalist all around, and I think he was a good replacement for Tom at the time.
It doesn't mean that the things he was saying were actually meaningful in any way.
No, but there's a lot of harmonies on this track as well that Matt's just provided himself, so he was harmonizing with himself, and that sounds really good. Like it really tickles my brain, right?
I do think that this song is the best example of Matt and Mark working together really well in terms of vocals. You can see how they bounce off each other, and it, as you say, it works, but it's just the actual content of it which is annoying for me. But can they blame it on their youth?
Oh, well, the effects in the intro would tell me that they should be blaming it on their youth. But if anything, I'd blame it on their older age now, where they think, we've got to stay relevant, we've got to use all these crazy effects, and just give it a rest. For the rest of the album, they keep bringing them back, and just stop it.
This song, for me, from the production to the content of it, is exactly where Blink were at this moment in their lifespan. I think Blame It On My Youth, the the kind of throwaway chorus, you know, talking about being young again, the way that the song is put together is exactly this era personified.
Yeah, and can we just talk about how fucking repetitive this track is? The blame it on my youth, just constantly throughout and it just gets to a point where I'm like, yeah, okay, we get it. You're blaming it on your youth, but you're not adding any substance to this. I think there's 2 verses and about 7 choruses. I don't even know how they managed that. And there was a cheeky callback to California in this, though, with the I was bored to death, so I started a band. And I was like, oh, I see what you're doing there, little callback to the last album. But overall, very repetitive track, too many whoa-whoa-whoas in there. The chorus was a bit mid, and yeah, forgettable.
And we go on to Generational Divide, which is more of an interlude, and to me is Blink saying, oh, look, we can still be heavy, we promise. We've still got a quick tempo in us.
This is classic Blink filler track. You know, the bridging tracks, I want to call them. This is a perfect example of that. Travis going absolutely sicko mode on the drums really makes you realize how important Travis is to the Blink-182 sound.
But I wish that there was more content like this little snippet throughout the album where it just feels a bit more raw and ready, a bit more, oof, yeah, I like that. And we go on to Runaway, which doesn't leave me with that feeling at all. This is the most album track I've ever heard.
I fucking hate the lyrics on this track. Leave me in the sun, I'm melting like a popsicle. Give me the flu, I'm dying in this hospital. I get that you're trying to like paint a picture or something, but these lyrics they're not making any sense now. You're just kind of throwing shit at a wall and going, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, there's a couple of electronic influences throughout this song, and I don't mind that. I don't mind them testing something, but it was just really lackluster.
I think the chorus was good. I think that's something throughout this album. They're always good at writing decent choruses. I've seen people saying that they didn't like any of the choruses, and I think that's unfair because there's a lot of catchiness throughout this album. Like going back and listening, I go, oh, I remember this track. Oh, I remember this track. And if it wasn't a good track, there'd be no way that I could remember it. But it's yeah, I don't think the lyrics do this track justice at all. I think if they'd have reworked the lyrics and added a little bit more pizzazz to it, this could have been an amazing track.
But let's move off that onto Black Rain. What did you think of that, Tim?
From the intro, I thought it was going to be a really weird track. Like I thought it was going to be very experimental, but then it kicks in and it actually has a decent feel to it. I was pleasantly surprised.
I thought with the like organy start to the song, they were going for a real epic sound, and I actually think they achieved that to a certain extent. I think out of all the unique kind of non-Blink tracks on 9, this is one of the better examples of it. I liked it at the time. I still like it now. I think that it was still missing that like 10% to push it to a really good track, but it was good. I still enjoyed it as a track.
Yeah, moving off that, we go into I Really Wish I Hated You, which is the most generic derivative breakup song I've ever heard in my life.
See, I'm a sucker for tracks like that, though. I love a boring, kind of punky heartbreak track, but this is more of an indie heartbreak track, if anything. It doesn't have much pop-punk vibes going for it. It's just a song. Again, I don't listen to it and go, oh, turn that off. But it's all right.
Lyrics are pretty poor. The instrumental is heavily lacking in anything that you could class as substance. But I do like Mark hits a really low note in this where it's like, I drove past your house, but you don't live there anymore. And he nailed that note. So out of this whole track, I will give him that one note and say that brings the track up a mark for me.
If you're a Blink fan, remember to like and subscribe.
Oh, yeah.
We talk about Blink a lot. Hit the buttons, but we'll move on to Pin the Grenade. Tim.
Comes out the gate with Travis Barker going absolutely sicko mode again. Reminds you that he's in the band. Reminds you that he is keeping the band together. He's kept everybody together across all of their side projects, which is a video that we did recently, so go check that out. And there's a lot of interesting things happening throughout this track. The chorus is super catchy, and I do genuinely think this is one of my favourite tracks from the whole album.
This is one of my least favourites.
Really?
I don't know why, but when I listened to this, I kind of just thought, I've heard this. Mm-hmm. I've heard this from this album, from California. I know exactly what's happening. It didn't capture me in any way. Again, I'm not saying that it's that horribly produced or anything. I thought it took the tempo up quite nicely again. But just, I don't know. It didn't capture me.
I think there's a lack of effects on it, which to me is a net positive. Like, that's an absolute winner. So any tracks on this album that don't come in with the stupid fucking, the ghosty vocals and weird sounding instruments, is perfect for me. But we move off that onto No Heart to Speak Of.
And this is my favourite song on the album. Ooh. I really like this. I think Travis Barker shines through. In the background, there's lots of interesting drum parts going on throughout this song. I thought it was layered quite nicely. The vocals from both fit in really well. I just liked how this flowed, and it felt like a bit of a heartbreaky anthem, but not so direct. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It felt like the lyrics had been thought through a little bit more.
Yeah, there was a bit more thought into it. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, the solid choruses are like throughout this album, and this track is a great example of how good the chorus writing is. I know I said it before, I'll say it again. Chorus is fantastic, but the verses started to get a bit tiring for me. I don't know how they managed to fit so many verses into one track, but they started to feel a bit, I don't know, worn out, a bit played out. But the instrumental on this track was amazing, and the outro is really like calm, and it's about 30 to 40 seconds long, which is surprising for a Blink track, but they've done it before, and I think it works really well with the weird like bass drums and the doom doom, that kind of shit.
Yeah, that's why I liked it. It was different good, but still fun. Yeah. And we go on to another kind of more interlude track in Ransom, which had a really strange intro.
Yeah, I've got that down as well. Yeah, the intro was a bit lackluster, and the effects, again, just so fucking annoying. Stop it with the effects. There's no need.
It was all right, though. They kind of went heavy again in the last section of that interlude, and you go, all right, yeah, it still exists, and then we go on to some emo shit.
Terrible song title. Absolutely terrible song title. I hate it when bands do this.
It reminds me of MGK's Fell in Love with an Emo Girl. But the song doesn't actually do that. I saw the title and was like, oh, I don't really remember this. Is it really cringy? But it wasn't particularly.
Yeah, in my head, I thought this was like one of the most experimental songs on the album, but it just goes to show how much a bad track title can put you off the song. Even though you've heard it before, you'll go back and listen and go, oh, I didn't like that one because the track title's cringe as fuck. But I did think that the first chorus, when that kicks in, it really pulls the track together and it makes it a whole. But other than that, I don't really have many notes.
I thought it was just a calm track, but it certainly wasn't on any emo shit. It was nothing about emo. It was just a calm little kind of indie, kind of punky song. But we go on to Hungover You. Tim, are you hungover this album?
No, fucking effects central again. The delivery of the lyrics is way too quick to kind of form anything you could call a rememberable song. A rememberable song, that's a word. A memorable song. He's kind of going for like a rap style, but it doesn't really work in Mark Hoppus's voice.
Do you know what my notes are for this song? Exists.
Yeah. There's nothing more needs to be said. The verses are boring. The chorus is kind of interesting for the first half, but then it falls off. Super forgettable track, and it's too close to the end of the track listing to have a track this poor. I don't understand that, but moving that, we move on to Remember to Forget Me, and I wish I could remember to forget this fucking track, because god damn.
Remember to Forget Me?
Yeah.
Do you not like this?
Not at all.
Oh, I thought that this was a great end to the album.
No.
Genuinely, the first half is acoustic, which we haven't really heard on this album, and I don't think that that's particularly good. But I really liked the outro and the drum solo from Travis Barker. I thought that was fantastic, and kind of he's been the redeeming factor of this album throughout, and I thought that it gave him a minute to shine at the end, and I was happy with that.
Yeah, Travis has been an absolute heavyweight for this whole album. If it wasn't for him, this would have been so terrible, like, throughout. But I thought it was an awful choice to end the album on, following on from the previous track as well, because that was also very, very bad in my opinion.
But I thought Hungover You was bad, but I'm defending the last half of this song, the actual closing section of the album. I thought was fantastic.
I think calling it Remember to Forget Me is like them saying about the album, remember to forget this album existed. Please don't remember this album.
And to be fair, most people have. Should we go on and give some thoughts about the album as a whole? Tim, what did you think?
This album left me wanting another album with Matt Skiba where he was featured more. Because the highest level of this album, I mean, the top level was Travis, but then underneath that, I would say were Matt Skiba's features, let's call them. Whenever he shone through, it was fantastic. Whenever Mark came in, I was kind of like, all right, Mark, yeah, we get it.
I kind of feel like you can hear the Mark influences at multiple moments throughout this in California, and unfortunately those influences come in a uninspired lyrical content, in a just basic instrumentals. And that's nothing against Mark. I actually think that a lot of the tracks that I'm talking about, and when I say it's uninspired, doesn't necessarily mean it's awful, but it doesn't mean it's good either.
Yeah, I think it's lacking in potential. Like, there was a lot of potential there that they've just not reached. And with a bit of fine tuning, a bit more work, and maybe a different producer, because this was produced by John Feldman, who people call the Feldy effect, because all of the albums he's released in the last 10 years all have this similar sound where it's not great and it seems like the general public don't really vibe with it. And I think if they'd gone in a different direction and maybe a little bit less production, it would have been better. And I would really like to have heard this album if it was done in the original Blink production style, because I think it would have gone off.
I think that with a few tweaks, this could have been incredible. But the question is, Tim, was it that bad?
I don't think it was that bad as an album. I really don't think it was that bad. But if I'm going to say as a Blink album, if I'm addressing this as a Blink project, then unfortunately, yes, it was that bad.
I would have to agree. And I think it's unfortunate because I don't want to say it was that bad.
No.
Blink are one of my favourite bands, and I think there was moments throughout this that I did enjoy, but there was too much similarity and too much boring content for me to say it was good, so it has to be that bad.
But based on that, what would you give this album out of 10?
I'd give this album a 4.5 out of 10.
Right, so I'm coming in at a 5. I cannot, in any good graces, give it higher than a 5 due to about half the tracks me not liking.
Yeah, I think a 4.5 is very fair. Yeah. And as I say, that's not... A lot of the tracks were just okay, but that doesn't add points. That doesn't get me excited. So,
but there are some tracks in there that are little hidden gems. There's maybe one or two throughout the whole album where I went, you know what? These would be playlist tracks that would happily add into a playlist. There's some memorable moments in there, but there's a whole lot of nothing going on.
I completely agree. And if you enjoyed this video, let us know in the comments. We're debating doing the same for California because California wasn't received well, as we said at the start. So maybe we can go through that track by track, although there's about 30 with all the deluxe ones, and review that. So let us know if you want to see that and hit all the buttons.
We've done plenty of other Blink videos, so be sure to check those out. We've done Blink album rankings. We've reviewed the newest album. We've done reviews of their side projects, so go check out all of that if you love Blink. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.
Peace.